Thank you everyone for attending our BYOD webinar today. I would like to introduce our presenter for today's BYOD webinar, Alan Smith. Alan came to Adcap from Cisco Systems about 2 years ago and holds 2 of the highest levels of certifications out there. He has a dual CCIE and voice and route and switch. He enjoys creating effective solutions for every customer and especially enjoys being able to solve business problems using a technological solution. Alan, go ahead and take it away.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us here this morning. Hopefully we can present some things that will be interesting and useful for you guys. So, as Ashley said, my name is Alan Smith. My contact information there is on the screen, alsmith@adcapnet.com. If you guys have any follow-up questions or something comes up even after the presentation, feel free to reach out to me and we can help out with that. Let's get moving. So what is BYOD? BYOD is one of those things that one of the buzzwords you hear passed around. Means probably something a little different to everyone you ask. But in general, for the purposes of our discussion, obviously it's bring your own device. It means a lot of things. It basically boils down to allowing your end users to pick the device they choose to increase their productivity and their mobility, their satisfaction. They can be purchased by the employer, the employee, or some other method. Basically means any device owned by anyone, used anywhere. So can be very helpful, can be very harmful if you don't do it right. So if you look right up until about 2007, before the introduction of Apple, the iPhone, and the Android, it was primarily a Windows PC dominated world. Right around that 2007, 2008 time frame, when the smartphones were first introduced, you started to see an uptick in the types of devices and the operating systems out there to where it's projected by 2016 you're going to have more mobile devices out there than you have actual laptops and things along those lines. So it's important. It's something that we need to deal with from a why should I even concern myself with BYOD? It's out there. So again, why is that a concern? Well, for the first thing, if you don't have a BYOD policy out there today and you give wireless to your users, you have one, you just don't know you have one. If you're using a username and password type scenario to allow people to connect to your network, they're connecting with more than just their PC or their Apple laptop. So it's happening out there. So it's kind of, might as well go ahead and get ahead of that and be able to control it. And that's one of the benefits there is your employees or your users have more control over the work experience they have. They get to pick which device they choose to use, which one fits their productivity better. 75% of the IT execs say that allowing their employees to bring their own devices increases employee morale. I know it's one of the things I enjoy. I like being able to pick my device and use the device I choose. From an employer perspective or from the company perspective, you get more productivity and it lowers your costs. According to another report, 72% of those same execs say the employees who bring their own devices to the workplace are more productive. And the annual benefits of having BYOD ranges anywhere from $300 to $1,300 per employee depending on the job type and job role. So it's a win-win scenario. But if you're going to do it, you need to have a strategy around it, just like anything else. Why do I need a BYOD strategy? Why not just allow people to connect the same way they've always connected through other devices, whether it's a mobile device or not? Part of that is by 2015, there's going to be 7 million new wireless devices out there. So the number of devices connecting, the number of things that can get access to your network are expanding drastically. And the borders of your business are changing. People are going to expect to be able to get their email on those mobile devices regardless of where they are, even when they're at home, when they're at work, and other applications other than just email. They're looking to be able to use those things regardless of where they're at to increase that productivity. Along with that, threats are getting sophisticated. The fact that now potentially part of your business intelligence is walking out of the 4 walls of your business is a concern. There's a threat to your intellectual property. There's a threat to the access to your network through these devices. So you need to have a strategy on how you're going to handle those things. So there's five basic steps to do that, to create an effective strategy around your BYOD, and we'll kind of step through those things real quick. The first one is to develop a business case. If you're going to do something, you want to make sure it's in your best interest to do it. So it's a pretty simple process, the same way you would do just about any technology. First thing you need to figure out is how much does my current total cost of ownership cost me? If I'm providing devices to my existing users, how much does that cost me? If I'm having to keep track of OS, operating system licensing, support for those devices, how much is that costing me? And if I'm going to change the way I'm doing things to more of a bring your own device, what's the upfront cost of that? Am I going to have any additional licensing that I didn't initially have to pay for to accommodate this new method of being able to use my environment? And then once I've figured out the upfront cost of the change, what's the ongoing cost of that change? The incremental cost to add on more licensing, tax implications to my employees. Now, if I'm providing them with a cell phone and cell phone service, what are the tax implications to them as an employee? All things to consider. Then we look at the savings that we're going to generate around an effective BYOD strategy. Take those things together, and we're going to get our return on investment and see if it makes sense for us to continue down the BYOD path. The next step is to figure out what different types of work styles I have. I need to segment my workforce to the different types of roles and use cases to try to decide which policies I need to implement to accommodate those. It tends to be more around how they do their job, regardless of their role or department. So if I have someone who's highly mobile, I need to have a profile that can accommodate them or takes them into consideration. If I have someone who is relatively static, they work off of an anchored workstation, then their profile or their policy is going to be slightly different. So you just identify the use cases, identify the user groups that are going to apply to each use case, and then you can start building an effective policy around that. Which is the next thing, creating that strategy. If it's who the user is, what kind of device they have, and what kind of access I want to give them. Do I want to allow the anchored workstation user any kind of mobile capabilities? Probably not, if they don't have a device that would ever be mobile. So I can limit that particular user's access through other devices. But if I have a remote worker who could be using anywhere from their corporate laptop to a VDI endpoint, their mobile phone or tablet, or they're even maybe their own personal computer. That person, I need to accommodate that and look into that and take into consideration the security implications of allowing them to connect from multiple locations across multiple devices. That's where the policy comes into effect, right? 86% of all BYOD costs are non-device related. So you need to take a look into that. I need to consider the different departments that are in there: HR, finance, legal, my corporate security. Make sure they understand what we're trying to accomplish, and they have an opportunity to provide me feedback from a security perspective, and from a standard perspective. Am I going to violate some industry standard that I have to adhere to by implementing a certain policy? Again, I need to define the minimum acceptable needs for my hardware, so you've at least got to have this particular type of device with at least this version of operating system or better, and it may or may not need to run some security software on top of that before you're allowed to connect to my network. And then we need to come up with a clear policy for entitlement to make sure that the right tools and services are delivered to the right users, so that the right people are using the right things. Then again, we need to come up with rules of use to make sure everyone understands what's good behavior and what's bad behavior right up front, right? So if people understand what the rules are, they're not surprised down the road if they're told they broke those rules. They should know. So what are some types of policies out there that are probably out there? And I would argue that if you don't have a BYOD policy and you provide wireless access to users today, you may be using this policy. It's total employee trust. The mobile devices are already there. They're already connected to your wireless network. They may or may not be able to use a VPN, whether or not you offer that to them from a laptop perspective. They can access pretty much anything. Once they come in, they connect to the wireless network. Every aspect of your network is available to them just like if they were connected on the corporate machine. They're able to use their cell phone voice, use their cell phone camera, do whatever they would normally do with a cell phone while they're at the office. And, you know, the question there is that sustainable, where you completely trust your employee, they're allowed to do anything, they're allowed to access anything with that mobile device. The other end of that.
Alan, a question came through. So is there a way for you to not share certain information through their mobile device?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about some of the devices a little later on through some identity services type applications to mobile device management and mobile application management. There's some tools out there that can be used to lock those things down and create separate policies depending on the user and depending on the device that we'll go into a little more detail with in just a little bit. The other side of that, the other end of the spectrum from wide open is completely locked down. That's where you're really concerned with security, PCI, HIPAA, FERPA, things along those lines. Only the IT specified devices are allowed to connect. Access is only available on site, no remote use, and anything else is prohibited, and that's also hard to sustain. It's very limiting on your ability to do your job. So the first thing you need to do is you need to define that policy. You come up with rules of use that people have to accept. It's a trade-off between those both scenarios. You know, there's no complicated jargon. It's really easy for people to understand what the rules are, what the policy is. Going to require you to have a password on there with a certain amount of timeout. I'm going to you're understanding that if this device is lost or if there's a problem, then I'm going to wipe the corporate information off that device. And then you're going to agree to immediately let me know if it's stolen or it disappears on you. Just some things that we're going to agree where the responsibilities lie. So again, there is a better way, right, than wide open or locked down. Just kind of see no evil, hear no evil. If I don't know what's out there, it must be okay. That's dangerous, right? And then to allow everyone or to lock everyone down and not allow anyone access is difficult to maintain as well. So that combined win-win between availability and security is the way we want to go. We want to enable the mobile workforce in those devices, but we want to protect the network, protect our information most importantly, right? We don't want confidential information taken out of the corporate environment, and we need to maintain our security policy in compliance with that across all our devices, whether they're a mobile device or a laptop. So why Adcap? Why our solution? We think the tools we bring are a comprehensive solution. We'll talk about those in detail. We've got expertise in the applications and the networking, the security, and the communication side of the house. 80% of our users are mobile, so we use it, we live it, we breathe it every day. We think we've got a track record of successful deployments to prove our worth. So again, we use those same elements internally. We understand how to use them, we support it, and we continually improve our own environment to match what you guys will be doing. So the goal of our mobility solutions, the goal of everyone's, right, what you're trying to accomplish. You want to maximize your workforce. You want to improve your competitiveness. You want to be faster to respond. You want to be more productive. At the same time, you got to keep your systems up, right? You got to keep things working. I can't add these things on and then cause a problem. I can't lose data. And for the most part, I want to keep my users happy. Otherwise, what was the point of doing this if I've got unhappy, unproductive users? So the elements of that, same things we've kind of already touched on: policy, network infrastructure, securing our data, and supporting and managing the environment. First one's policy. The key thing to understand here is that the policy needs to come before enforcement. I can't implement a policy if I don't know what the policy is. So the first thing is to kind of sit down, determine my use cases, determine my user types and their needs and the ways I need to limit them. I need to come up with a policy, and then once I've determined what that policy is, then I can implement that policy to enforce the policy and make sure that it's obeyed and the rules are followed. So we want to maximize those devices. Again, better competitiveness, better response, better productivity, and protect my internal environment. That's what the policy is going to do for me.
Alan, there's a question that came through. Is there a way that Adcap can help build those policies, if this is something that you know, we're just now looking into, we're wanting to implement this, but we're not really sure how to build those policies. I mean, can Adcap help us with, you know, this, figure out the BYOD process?
Absolutely. Part of what we would do is sit down on the front end of an engagement for a low-level design to understand what types of users you have, what are the different use needs of each types of users that you have, and help come up with the types of policies that you would want to implement, as well as making recommendations of things that we've done in the past, things that specifically geared toward industry security standards, things along those lines. The next the key thing to consider is your infrastructure. If I decide I want to do bring your own device, and I'm going to triple, maybe even quadruple the number of devices connecting to my network, then I need to understand what the implications are going to be on my network. So I need to look at my wireless LAN, make sure that it's going to be able to support the additional users, my network switches. If I need to beef up my wide area or my wireless local area network, then I need to make sure my switches are going to be able to support the addition of new access points, or maybe faster access points, or maybe even just more users. And then the implications of my that's going to have on my internet connection and my wide area network as well. If all of a sudden I've got, again, a very loose policy, and I triple the number of devices, and all those devices can stream YouTube videos to their mobile device, that's going to have an impact on my internet connection. So I just need to consider those things. The next thing, and probably the most critical, is the data security. I need to control access to network servers, to my network and my servers. It's great if I can walk in with my personal laptop and connect and do everything on I would normally do with a corporate laptop. But what if I'm not running any antivirus or any anti-spamware? What if I'm not doing anything to protect myself? I'm not running the latest security patch for Windows or whatever operating system I'm running. It's a concern, so we need to be able to control the access based on some of those things. I don't want to lose any data out of my environment, and I need to protect myself from attack. The last thing I need is to allow someone to bring their device that happens to have a virus on it that in turn infects all the rest of the machines in my environment. So it's important that we consider that security and the security of our data. A couple of things we use to do that are specifically in-house here, is we use Mobile Iron from a mobile device management perspective, and we use Cisco's Identity Services Engine from a policy engine on that. So the Mobile Device Manager is basically, it's a very simple way of accomplishing what I'm trying to do here. From a mobile device perspective, I download the Mobile Iron client. That client then registers with the mobile device manager that's either on-premise at my location or a cloud-based mobile device manager. Based on my user credentials and the information and the profiles that are set up inside that Mobile Iron MDM, it's going to push back down the user credentials and the device info to me. It's going to validate me, and it's going to decide what I can do and what I can't do from a mobile device perspective. Again, some of the things that I can configure there is I can push out an email configuration, I can install certain apps, I can limit certain apps, I can go ahead and push down the Wi-Fi configuration for the Wi-Fi wireless network, any VPN configurations, any certifications or certificates rather I'm going to need. I can push those down. I can set policies of how long your password has to be, whether you have to have a password, whether I'm going to allow jailbroken or rooted devices on my network, and I can create white and black lists for applications or URLs as well and push those down from the MDM. The Identity Services Engine is the other piece. So the Mobile Device Manager kind of protects me for the most part when I'm off my environment. The Identity Services Engine really kicks in when you're on the environment, and we'll talk a little bit about how they work together. The idea there is it's a contextual-based or a context-based policy engine where I'm looking at who you are, what application you're trying to utilize, where you are geographically. Are you on my network? Are you across the VPN? Are you coming in some other way? Are you wired versus wireless? What time are you trying to connect to my network, and what time are you trying to access these resources? You know, why is a particular person trying to access confidential financial information at 2 o'clock in the morning over the VPN? Just things you can look at. And then how I'm connecting. Am I connecting over an iPad? I'm connecting over an Android smartphone, a personal laptop? All those things are things that I can consider before I grant that person access to my network. So there's a little bit of overlap. You might be thinking, what's the difference between what the Identity Services Engine does and what a mobile device manager does? There is some overlap, but they aren't really the same thing. The Identity Services Engine is more focused toward the network-based IT control, and the MDM is more of a device and network-based IT control from the outside. One is internal network focused, one is external network focused, and there's some overlap between those two. We'll look at that here. So what the Identity Services Engine can do is it can work with some mobile device managers out there and can collect information from them. So one of the first things it can do is I come on site, I try to connect to the wireless network. One of the first things the Identity Services Engine can do is it can reach out to my mobile device manager and ask, is he compliant? As far as you're concerned, is he compliant? Is he rooted or is he not rooted? Is he jailbroken or not? Is he got the mobile iron client installed on his machine? If he's not registered, if he's not compliant from an MDM perspective, he doesn't connect to my network. Can look at other things. Is pin lock on there? Who's the manufacturer and model? What's the serial number? What OS are they running? So I can, because the mobile device manager knows this information about me, it's one of the sources the Identity Services Engine can query to find out is it compliant and should it be allowed on my network. So again, one of the other aspects is the management and support. You're changing from organization-owned devices to personally owned devices. Different tools are needed to do that. We want to provide ease of use for our users, but we want to protect our network, so it's important. Some of the things we use there is, again, we use the mobile device management. Mobile Iron is what we use here in-house. We use Cisco's Prime infrastructure from a network perspective to manage the network internally. And again, we use Cisco's Identity Services Engine as a part of that as well. Mobile Iron allows me to configure those, some of the things we've already touched on, policy and identity, email and applications, connectivity information we can push down. I can allow you to do user self-service where you can register with your own device. It'll walk you through the process and you can push some of those things onto your device. I can establish a corporate app store. When I want to make sure that certain apps are available from a corporate app store, I can create those things, and then I can manage my inventory. I can control my access, make sure I can enforcing that identity, and again, the critical thing is I can wipe the corporate data if I need to, and I can limit roaming costs. Cisco's Prime infrastructure takes that just from a pure device perspective and the applications and the things associated just with that device, and then enhances what I can do on my network. So any network, it could be my remote access network, or wireless, or my wired, any of the locations, and really any device, I can see that information through my Prime infrastructure interface. So here I've connected on my PC, and you can see my username right there. So in the IP address I connected on, and then you can, over on the middle section, you can see the controller I'm connected on and the access point I'm connected through, and the IP address and the information about that access point. You can see my association ID, you can see the interface I'm coming out of, the SSID I connected on, and then the profile that was applied to me. So you can see all that information through the Prime infrastructure interface. Good information to have just if you're trying to figure out what I'm doing, if you're trying to troubleshoot an issue I'm having. The nice thing about Prime infrastructure is it takes the information from the Identity Services Engine, who's pulling the information also from the mobile device manager, and it's getting that extra information. The way it knows my username, the way it knows what type of device, the fact that I'm a Microsoft workstation, the fact that the network I connected on was a Honey Precision, and all this extra information is information that was provided to Prime infrastructure from the Identity Services Engine in that integration. So it's very good information to have. Then if I tie that in with the Mobility Services Engine from Cisco, then I can take that information to a map. So in this case, I'm looking at the same similar information, but I can see exactly where on the map my user is. So I call you up and I say, I'm having some really problems with this application, and then you look at the map and you can see that I'm behind the elevator where I have very little wireless coverage, and that's probably the reason why I'm having connectivity issues. But again, you see the same information from that little pop-up bubble just by finding me on a map. You can see my username, my IP address, which AP I'm connected on, which protocol I'm using, and which frequency I'm on, which band. all helpful information in troubleshooting and managing me as a user. So again, the Identity Service Engine, it integrates in with the MDM. It integrates in with the Cisco Prime to provide that detailed user information. It also helps in self-provision onboarding. There's a self-provisioning aspect to the Identity Services Engine that's also available. It supports sponsored or open guest policies, so that's another aspect of BYOD. Do I want to allow guest users to be able to come in and use my network? The Identity Services Engine will help me do that. I can either control that through sponsored guest access, where you have to come to a central resource or a known resource who will create your guest access credentials, or I can have an open guest policy, and then based on that policy, I can restrict the access to that guest user through the policy enforcement of the Identity Services Engine. So just to wrap things up, again, you know, Adcap, we provide a solution for BYOD. We'd be more than happy to work with you to help come up with your policies, make sure you're implementing the right kind of security, look at the management and support resources you're using, take a look at the infrastructure aspects as well, the applications that you're using. Our vendor partners are an essential part of that solution. We've already spoken about MobileIron, Cisco. We also work with Cisco's Meraki for a cloud-based solution. I'd love to work with you guys and just have some more follow-up discussions on your mobility strategy and any BYOD you guys are doing out there. If there's any questions out there, I would love to take a shot at answering them for you.
Oh, great question, Andy. Who would be the best person for me to contact about implementing BYOD?
Well, the first person that's probably the best is, your Adcap account manager. If, for whatever reason, you don't know who your Adcap account manager is, again, my contact information is alsmith@adcapnet.com. I'd be more than happy to work with you to find out who the right person is, or to answer those questions just myself if you have any issues.
Alan, another question came in. Alan, you said that the benefit of BYOD is $300 to $1,300 per employee. By what measurement is that determined?
That's actually information from a Cisco Horizon survey that was out there, and it was based on the estimated cost savings per employee. So the idea there is just as an example of one of those things that might be taken into consideration. If I'm paying, I don't know, $100, I'm just going to throw a round number out there, $100 a month per employee for me paying for their internet, for their mobility, and then I'm having to pay once every 2 years $400 for a new device to refresh their device. That's all capital costs I'm taking on as a company. Just as simple as me saying now, I'm going to give you a $50 a month credit, go out and get your own cellular service, and I'm no longer going to sponsor buying your own device. Most people are willing to go out there and pick their own device, but I will give you $50 a month. So now I've saved myself $50 a month per employee on just the cost of their service, and I'm no longer taking on the capital cost of buying the device for them. Not to mention the fact that just from a pure, other studies have kind of talked about the fact that somewhere between $1,500 to $2,000 is saved by allowing a person to work from home 1 day a week. And an effective BYOD strategy can help you do that as well. That's water that's not being used, power that's not being used, other resources that are not being used on my network for that 1 day that a person's not in my office consuming those resources. Great question. Any other questions?
Alan, it doesn't seem to look like we have any more questions, so thank you again, Alan, for presenting on BYOD. Thank you again, everyone, for joining our webinar today. We look forward to speaking with you, and everyone have a great rest of the day. Thanks again.